I think that I consider immunity to be a lot bigger tent than most. So you have to think about the metaphor that you use when you're talking about immunity. What do you think of your immune system as? And so I thought carefully about what I think of as the immune system, and this is what I came up with. So I've been thinking of the immune system as a castle. So our body is a castle, okay? And when we get infected, say this horseman comes in and we get an immune response, and the soldiers start having an immune response, okay? And you can get even a larger immune response pulling out something like a dragon like this. The microbes have their own response. And then you can have a sustained response, okay? Something like this that'll keep going on, and if you have new infections, this will prevent the infection from occurring. When you want to look at individual infections, we study what the individual soldiers do. And so you can look at each different type of killing technique. You've got a guy with a mace here, or someone with a chainsaw, and a what is that? It's an arrow, bow and arrow. And it's a really good metaphor for figuring out how these weapons work. And it's not such a good metaphor for figuring out why you suffer from disease. So you start to get how you suffer from disease when you look at this tool here, because when he sets off the cannon, he gets injured, okay? So your immune response can cause self-injury, and one of the main ways that this happens is we talk about there being an overreaction, and the immune response causes damage to the body, okay? But there's more subtlety to this, and when you think about what really happens in a castle, there's a lot that goes on that doesn't have to do with killing the enemy. So some examples of this are tissue repair or castle repair. You have to repair what damage happens to the castle. You have to have fuel. You have to grow your crops and catch the animals in order to be able to survive the siege. And then there are trade-offs, and this is the last one here. It's fine to have tea parties when you're not fighting a war, but when you're fighting a war, the soldiers come and take the food away and they have to use it for themselves. And without these trade-offs, you end up damaging the body even more. Okay, so as I was putting this together, I realized I was doing something. I had used all of the kits to put the immunology together that came from the blue boxes that they sell to boys. Okay, so all of the weapons come from boxes that you sell to boys. All of the physiological things, reproduction, food, repair, all of that came in pink boxes that they sell to girls. Okay, and I think that in order to really describe how you have an immune response and how you survive an infection, you need to think about what comes in the boy box and in the girl box and put them together. So that's my metaphor. So, the reason we started thinking about this was because of an experiment we did. We like to take disease-inducing pathogenic bacteria and infect them into the fly. And we use a variety of different pathogens. We tend to focus on human pathogens because it makes it easier to get medical funding. We can say these are things that infect people. I won't touch that again. And for example, we use extracellular microbes like those listed up at the top. We use vesicle-bound microbes like Salmonella and Mycobacterium. And we use those found in the cytoplasm like Listeria monocytogenes and Francisella tularensis. And we infect the fly in the same way with all of these. We take it, we shoot it into the hemocoel of the fly, and watch whether the fly lives or dies, and look at the immune response. I want to point out that here I'm injecting about 20 times as much material as I would inject into a fly normally, so I'm really inflating it. We normally just inject 50 nanoliters and the fly barely puffs up at all. So, my student Janelle did a genetic screen where she took 1,200 mutant fly lines, infected them with Listeria, and asked for flies that died quickly. And we got this result, which was sort of puzzling at first, because what we found is that so on this axis here, I've plotted the ratio of lifespan of mutant over wild type. So what this shows is that all of our mutants live less long than infected wild type flies. They all live about half as long, maybe an eighth as long. And then on this here, I show how many bacteria are found in the fly compared to wild type a day after infection. And what we expected was to find that there would be a lot of bacteria in the flies that die quickly. They'd be immunocompromised, and there'd be a lot of bacteria. And we found that. We have 6 mutants out here where the bacteria grow a lot more rapidly in the mutant flies. But really, most of the flies, the bacteria didn't grow any faster. The flies just dropped dead from the infection. And so, if I thought about this in sort of a classical immunological way, this wouldn't be immunology because it doesn't have anything to do with killing the bacteria. It has to do with surviving the infection. But I think that surviving the infection is an important output when you're looking at immunology as well. So, evolutionary biologists working largely in plants have come up with a nice way of describing things that we've applied to our work. Unfortunately, this is a word that causes confusion for immunologists. Since you use this word 6 different ways already, I hope that a 7th will be okay. And it comes from looking at how predators interact with plants. And it works like this. So ecologists, evolutionary biologists describe 2 different ways that you can survive an infection and how your fitness can be maintained after an infection. There's tolerance, which means that you limit damage by the predators, and there's resistance, which means that you prevent predator activity. It works like this. Basically, it comes down to the question of what do you do when a cow chews off your genitals? Okay? So, you have a cow, it comes along and chews the flower off this plant here. This plant its fitness goes to 0. Okay? It can't reproduce anymore, it needs another way around it. One way of dealing with this is to increase tolerance. So an example of a tolerance mechanism here would be to remove apical dominance and have a second flower grow when the first flower was removed. It doesn't reduce the cow concentration, but it increases fitness. The next mechanism is resistance, something like thorns. That would decrease the number of cows that end up eating the plant once they learn to avoid the plant. So I showed this to a bunch of ecologists in May, and I said, what do you think? And they said, you've disregarded all the lessons we teach you. You didn't draw the flowers the right size. So there should be trade-offs when you have a resistance response. So I drew this flower smaller, and they liked that. But then they had a problem with this flower, because it turns out that before you have your tolerance response, it isn't costing you anything. So this flower here is bigger than the second flower that comes out. And so I sent it back to this ecologist and said, what do you think about it now? And he said, you know cows don't eat flowers, right? And so I don't care. The point is that there are these 2 different methods of surviving infections or maintaining your fitness. And the ecologists have developed a nice graphical way of seeing the difference. So if you want to look at resistance, what you do is you infect your animal and then ask how many microbes do you end up with in it after a given period of time. And so this one here, you end up with fewer microbes than this one here, so you'd say this is a more resistant strain. Okay, that's easy. But you can add more information to this. You can turn the graph on its side, and for each of these points, you can put on a health index, and then each of these points plot the health of that animal. And this is pretend data, but I pretend it looks like this. You can then plot a line through these data points, and what you find is that tolerance is defined as the slope of this curve. And it's the way we use the word tolerance in engineering. If you have a tolerant animal, it's going to not get very sick as the microbe load increases. If you have an animal that's not tolerant, the animal is going to get much sicker as the microbe load increases. So ideally, you can plot the whole curve and put data points over this entire thing. The way we do things, we can't really do that because all of the assays I use are destructive. So to measure health, I look at the survival time of the flies, and the flies die, so there's only one output there. And to look at microbe number, I have to grind the flies up and plate them out, which also kills them. So I can get one really good point right here, and I also know what the starting point is. Well, I want to concentrate on this point here. So if you fit this to the simplest possible curve, if you imagine that a tolerance curve is a straight line, a y equals ax plus b type of line, if resistance varies, you expect this to happen. You expect that your point is going to move up and down on that tolerance curve. It's not going to fall off the curve because the slope isn't changing. That property is constant if you're just changing resistance. Likewise, if you just change the slope, the resistance isn't going to change, and you'll find your point goes up and down. Okay? Now, if both of these are independent and can happen at the same time, what you expect to happen is that you're going to end up with a 2-dimensional space that your animal can move to whenever you alter its immunity. So, for example, it could move straight up, which would be a change in tolerance only, no change in resistance. And each of these 9 different possibilities are things that theoretically can happen. So I'll give you examples of these and tell you sorts of properties that can shift